Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Creative Lifescaping. I'm Dr. Caroline Brookfield, your host, and I'm super excited today to have Mike Regina, for those of you in the US, or Mike Regina, for those of us in Canada, joining us today. Mike is a really interesting person. He's a perennial entrepreneur, a philanthropist, a family man, team player, and a leader. He thrives on observing the masses and doing the opposite, which is kind of how we met, because I totally agree with Mike. When people zig, I like to zag. Mike gets up at 3:30 a.m., which to me is not getting up. That's just really just going to bed or getting up in the middle of the night. He connects thousands of people a year strategically for the purposes of increasing their business. It's not a typical model for a growing company. He's created multi-million-dollar companies that don't compete on price, and it's a classic blue ocean strategy. Mike has developed key strategies to remove the lid by being intentional, impactful, and reciprocal within his communities. He's co-founded multiple companies, including Big Sky Enterprises, which is a construction firm, and Global Post Auditing Solutions is a leader and disruptor in transportation freight solutions for Fortune 500 companies. That is an industry. I'm sorry, tripping over my words there, Mike, because it's something I don't know very little about. So welcome, Mike Regina. So glad to have you here.
Caroline, thank you so much for having me today. It is an honor to be here, and I'm excited just to participate on a live video feed on LinkedIn. So actually, I haven't done it yet, but we're in the process of doing it. We've kind of created the whole brand and whatnot. So looking forward to learning from you, what you do here to be able to do that for myself in the future.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, I'm not as intentional as you, which is something I need to work on. I tend to be like, oh, LinkedIn, I'll jump in and do that and figure it out. So I am learning as I go. Happy to share anything that might be helpful for you. So I'm sure yours will be a lot more polished as it comes out. For those watching, I was on Mike's podcast, The Ops Entrepreneur, and I was so blown away by his organization with him and his team. They sent out like posts and like suggestions of how to promote the podcast. And so I've stolen a lot of those ideas from you already, Mike.
I loved it. It was great to see. And just so you know too, I also stole mine a lot from other people that I did podcasts for. So guess what? There's nothing new under the sun.
You know what? And that's actually a perfect segue into the whole point of the podcast, which is about everyday creativity. One of my favorite quotes, which is so ironic that there's no source to attribute it to, is creativity is plagiarism undiscovered.
I love it. And I couldn't agree more.
And
it's okay. I mean, guess what? I mean, adding on to things too that have already been created. To me, that's creativity as well.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. So on that note, because Mike, I just looking at your website, thinking about creativity from some people's perception, which is like an artistic thing, would you consider yourself creative in that way, or do you consider yourself creative in another way? Tell me about
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. And in my opinion, I think everyone is creative. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't have creativity. It's just in what area are they creative? For me, am I artistic? I mean, not in saying I'm artistic with my hands and creating a beautiful picture or a mosaic, whatever that may be. But I'm creative in being a solution to a problem, or changing. How do I increase revenue? How do I separate myself from the competition? How do I create the ultimate event? Those things to me all have to do with creativity.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Anytime you have an idea or some type of concept and you want to try and put that into the real world, that's creativity. So tell me, you started a car wash as a teenager, and that was kind of your first foray into entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about what motivated that and how you found that when you jumped into that journey.
Absolutely. So, growing up, I just always loved hustling and, being able to get things and, just taking pride in whatever it was that I do. I love to work, and just So when, after, doing a little bit of work, just for my dad, growing up in middle school, painting or stuff here and there, my dad at the time had a couple of office buildings that he owned that he leased out. And he said, hey, Mike, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to go and wash cars. He's like, I have all the hoses. All you gotta do is go buy, your sponges, vacuum, your car wash soap, and whatever it is that you're gonna need, and also the detail cars. And I said, I'm in. And it was my first taste, as you shared, of entrepreneurship, and I absolutely loved it. I went from making $5 an hour painting or doing whatever to making $25 to $30 an hour, running up and down the stairs, asking people who wants their car washed, who wants their car detailed, because I knew that for every 30 minutes, it would take me 30 minutes to wash a car. So if I could do 2 cars in an hour, I'm making, which I charge $10 an hour plus tip, I could make $25 to $30 an hour. And it just was, again, it was my first taste in entrepreneurship. And I knew right then and there, like, I have to do my own thing if I'm going to create whatever it is that I want to create. And I'm also better that way because I run fast. I hate being in a box, where it's like, hey, I just want you to do this and just stay there in your lane. I don't really have a lane.
No.
I have like a road.
A road. You have like a landing airport. I don't know.
I need a lot of things.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious. So a couple of things that struck me when you're telling me that story. Number one, it sounded like you had a lot of support from your dad. And number two, it sounded like you had a lot of motivation. So do you think that the support from if you hadn't had your dad to support you to say, hey, you should do this, or were you motivated by money? Was that what motivated you, or was that something else that not so tangible?
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily I was motivated by money. You know what? I'm motivated by doing things in excellence. And I think if you do that, the money comes. And that was, a great example for me, or a great lesson for me growing up. Listen, if I do a great job, I'm going to have repeat business. If I do a terrible job, I'm going to be one and done. So, it was a great life lesson for me, to do something where it's like, hey, Mike, hey, I need you to come in. Just every week, I want you to just come up here on this day and just, wash my car. Oh, by the way, it's been a couple months. Can you detail my car? So now that's $100 to detail plus tip. Yeah. So, I'm, like my dad had the idea, but guess what? It's always up to us, even though if someone encourages us or pushes us, it's up to us to execute. So that falls on us.
Yeah. But what's curious to me, and this goes down to whether it's entrepreneurship and, as you know, and if people who are not listening don't know, I have had a few businesses myself. They haven't been as successful as yours. And I've since closed them, but and whether it's a business, whether it's car wash or any kind of company that you're starting or any type of creative endeavor, because starting a company is extremely creative. Do you have suggestions for people who are out there that are like, I really want to start a car wash, or I really want to do this thing, and they're kind of stuck? Like, what kind of got you over that hump to go and buy the sponges and go and get the vacuum and find the clients? Like, can you give some suggestions?
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, if anyone's going to get into a business, they need to determine, is this a hobby, something that I love to do, and can it be a business? Because you need to make sure, because a lot of people love to do something and they say, I'm going to create a business out of it. And then I say, okay, great. Show me the numbers. Put them together. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That is extremely important to identify in the beginning. So it's, to me, that's important. And for me, if you're going to go and start your own business and be an entrepreneur, you have to believe that you are the best solution to the problem, that your business, I don't care who you're going up against. I don't care if a company's been in business for 50 years. You need to believe that you're the best solution for the end user. Otherwise, why bother? And I also want to encourage, any of your listeners that success, don't let someone else's success define yours. You define what success is.
Mm-hmm.
right? If we sit there and try and compare ourselves, we will never accomplish anything, or we won't believe that we've accomplished anything. Am I a multi-billion-dollar company? No, not even close. But that doesn't, to me, doesn't define success. It's up to me to define what that is. And I think that's important. Otherwise, we're going to really struggle mentally, and we might make a lot of bad decisions along the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important because you see what other people are doing, and that whole comparison is the thief of joy. And for me, my definition of success is kind of like what you're saying about the box, like doing what I want to do, and building a life where I can go out hiking on the weekday if I want to, and that's success to me. But like financially, it might look much different than someone else's idea of success. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a really key concept. I love that.
Yeah.
So link the dots for me between, I know you're a serial entrepreneur, so you've got Big Sky Enterprises, and then you also have the Global Post Auditing Solutions Company. So one is both highly complex, very competitive industries. One's in construction, one's in supply chain. So tell me, can you link some of the dots for me? Like, how did that come to pass?
Sure. So, my brother and I, we first of all, we grew up in the construction industry. Our dad was a developer and a builder, and we started out as laborers in concrete in high school. So after, my senior year in high school, after I graduated, my dad started a concrete company. So we went from boys to men in about 2 hours. So I think it's important to know that that's probably the hardest thing that you can ever do. And I think it's another great life lesson. I just had my son do it for a period of time, because you only get one shot with concrete. It's not something that you can come back to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put it down, you have to finish it, which like I said, is a great life lesson. So started there, did that all throughout my college career, or 4 years of college in the summers, and then after I graduated, my dad started a construction management company. So we did that under him, for about 7 years. And then that's when we started our own company. When we came up with, we started identifying customers, and he said, "Hey guys, it's time for you guys to go on your own. You're young, go make your mistakes now." So we started Big Sky almost 20 years ago today. And you know what, just along the way, we've created other businesses, some that have closed and failed. But I think it's important to recognize that regardless if you failed, you tried. I don't know what their percentages are, but I would love to check this out, of how many people had an idea but never pursued it, right? So kudos to anyone that tried something and went after it. Whether you closed it or you're still going, you know what? I applaud you, and definitely have my respect. Now, and to me, what I found along the way of creating different businesses is that every business still has, the basic business principles that you need in order to, basically start it. You need funding, you need, whether it be personally or, getting, outside, funding. But at the end of the day, like, you need to be a solution to a problem. What solution to the problem are you? And then, okay, what am I going to do in order to separate myself from the competition? So that requires creativity, right? Look, construction has been around since the beginning of time. Okay, I'm in logistics. We find payment errors. You know what? People have been paying invoices forever. So how do we do it differently than everyone else? What is it that's gonna separate us? So we got to be creative, whether it be our services, our product, it could be our technology, it could be our customer service. No one can compete with you on customer service. I mean, your customer service is always going to be creative and specific just to you. And that's why I always talk about, I don't care what industry you go into, you need to believe that you're the best solution to that problem. So to me, it's just a foundation. Business is business, but in terms of the service and the deliverables, that's going to be different. But how you go about it is where the creativity comes about.
Okay, great. So if we have some listeners who, and by the way, for anybody who's joining us a little bit late, I'm speaking with Mike, Regina, And I'm Canadian, so I'm going to call him Mike Regina, which is the capital of Saskatchewan. I hope it's the capital. I should know that, shouldn't I?
It is. I can confirm that.
And Mike is a serial entrepreneur. He's a speaker, philanthropist, and we're speaking about creativity in business and entrepreneurship. So Mike, when you talk about being creative in customer service and in the construction industry, I totally agree with you. And what really struck me was when you said kudos to people who start a business and try something, because any creative practice, whether it's making a meal, drawing, making a painting, or sewing an outfit and learning how to sew, you start with failure. So if you sit there and think about that idea that you'd like to start and thinking that it has to be perfect, well, it's probably not going to be perfect. It's probably going to fail, but it's going to take you to that fifth, sixth step that will now be, you have to be willing to step into that failure, I think is maybe what you're saying.
Absolutely. Look, you know how many of these companies that are Fortune 500s that have gone bankrupt multiple times? Walt Disney was told that he's not creative enough.
Yes.
He doesn't have enough imagination. And it's just, you just can't listen to always what the outside is saying. I mean, like I said, if you believe that you are the best solution for that problem, then you got to go for it. Yeah. If you don't, then you just need to stay working, for a company. And guess what? Both are okay.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. One of my first, I'm as a veterinarian, I have my own business because I'm a contractor, but my first kind of business, company, was to find staff for veterinary clinics, because they would always be like, I need somebody, I'm so stuck. And what you said earlier about the business part of it, the strategy, I knew I was the best solution because it was an affordable way for me to link them to staff. But what I hadn't considered was what people were willing to pay for. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of excited at first because there was nobody really doing that in the space. And now it's getting more common. But sometimes there's a reason for that. And I think that goes back to your idea of knowing you're the best solution, and also looking at it from an objective point of view, like the numbers. Is it a hobby? And, I've had those two businesses that have failed, but I call it my cheap MBA. So now, I talk about things like, click-through rates and funnels and all that stuff that I never would. To me, it's all about lifelong learning. And as long as I don't lose my house in the process, then that's good, right?
I'm willing to put it all on the line. And that's the thing. My first business when I started our construction business, I had an 11-month-old and a newborn. Wow. And guess what? I never once flinched because I believed that I was going to be successful. I didn't, and I would leverage everything. If I believe that whatever it is that I'm going to do, that I'm going all in. Mm-hmm. And to me, guess what? What's the worst that can happen? Yeah. Okay. I lose a house, I lose a car. So what? I'll just go rent a car. I have gained the knowledge that I need. Now I can go forward and start again, except this time that I'm starting, I'm going to be that much better.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I always think I've got a long ways to go before I'm, I sell my house, live in an apartment. I'm the same same thought as you.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'd love to know is for people who do have businesses like yours, and you talk about embedding creativity into your customer service, do you have an intentional way in your companies to engage that creativity, whether it's among your employees, like frontline employees versus management? How do you kind of tease that in there, or do you?
Absolutely. For us, we want our whole team to be all in. Right. And we want them to understand and recognize that they have a voice, and it's important that they do. Otherwise, we're not going to be leveraging all the talents that they have. Mm-hmm. And just because, they're at a certain position and we're at a different position doesn't mean that they don't know something that we don't know. It's definitely, I want to leverage their talents and abilities, whether they're 23 or 63. And it doesn't matter. Because they know things that I don't.
So how do you do that? Do you do that intentionally, or is it more of a cultural foundation, or tell me more?
Yeah, I'd say it's cultural, which is intentional, mm-hmm. right? And, every time that and that's all part of the, our interviewing process and hiring process, we make sure that we're intentional with that. We're asking questions. We're letting them know that, hey, guess what? If you're going to be working, with us as a team member, just understand that you have got, just know that we hire people. We basically say that the Steve Jobs things. we don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire people to tell us what to do. And that empowers them. And when they have ownership, they deliver way more in terms of an ROI than those that are like, hey, here's what I want you to do. We want really entrepreneurs, and to have accountability for their actions. And when you do that, again, we're able to be successful, year in and year out because of that. And just think about how you feel when you're someone that is bringing value to a team.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, you can't wait to get into work. You can't like, hey, I just went on vacation, and by the way, I couldn't wait to come back.
Yeah. That's
like,
amazing.
When you have that kind of, people saying those things, it just brings joy, and the culture is stronger, and, and then that in turn, we do a better job for our clients, which is, that's the end game.
I mean, it sounds like you're really starting at the very foundational level of like client candidate selection, but also setting that expectation for how you expect them to show up. And what the word that pops up as you're describing this, I don't know how you feel about whether you consider that to be a very psychologically safe environment, which is like the panacea that everybody's looking for. Like, do you think that those creativity and psychological safety are connected?
Oh, 100%. And guess what? If someone doesn't feel safe, I mean, how are they going to, be strong cognitively? How are they going to even, want to put all of their, time and energy into whatever it is that they're doing for that particular position? When people feel safe, they're confident, right? And they're like, hey, I have skin in this game, and I really want to make sure that whatever I have to deliver for a client, I am going to be all in. And if I fail, I fail, right? Or we fail as a team. Those are the types of things that I always want to make sure that our team understands. And it's also using words like team. People in our company and vendors that work for us, I say, hey guys, just so you know, we don't have employees. We have team members. And every time that you address anyone in our company, please address them as a team. I hate the word employee. I just feel it just doesn't speak to who they are, because they are just as important as the leadership. And, it doesn't matter where they are. They're a key integral part. They're rubbing shoulders with our clients. We need them.
It sounds like, one of the things that, if I may speak to what it sounds like, is that your team members feel like they have each other's back, which is really the important thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. And we have their back.
And the data shows that you need to have psychological safety to be creative, because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to take a risk to fail, and you're not going to be creative, because that always has a risk of failure. So I think
I just actually heard listened to a podcast this morning when I was at the gym working out, and it was talking about, are you for or from in terms of how you lead? Are you for people, or are you trying to get something from them? Oh. And I thought it was just brilliant. And if you're for them, they're going to be 10 times more productive than if you're trying to get something from them.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift. It was funny when I, as a contractor, I go into vet clinics and I work for the day at different places all the time when I'm working as a vet. And I had a colleague who would complain all the time about, like, this clinic is inefficient and that staff member this and that. And I felt like really kind of icky afterwards. And funnily enough, that completely shifted my mindset, because I go into somewhere and it might not be run the way I want to run it, but my job is to be there for them, to give them a day off, to integrate with the staff the best I can, do the job the best I can, and leave. And sometimes it's just a slight reframing of, like, what am I really doing here? Like, what is the point? My point is to serve that client. And like you're saying, your point is like for people versus from people. I think it's a really important mindset. And it makes you happier, because if you're trying to get stuff from people all the time, you're going to be disappointed, right?
Absolutely. And just think about it. If we're serving our customers and we're always for them, they're like, I am going to always work with these people because they're for me.
Exactly. Yeah, people want to help people who like feel like they have your back. So I've put your website up here, Mike, for people who want to find Mike, Mike Regina, regina.io. Also, if you want to hear some more amazing business tips and how to zig when other people zag, then we've got, you can find Mike's podcast, The Opposite Entrepreneur, on Instagram, also on his website. You can find that. But speaking of being for and from people, before we get to your true story, I want you to quickly tell me about your philanthropy. And you have an organization called Tabby Time Founders Fund. So, how have you used creativity to help raise funds for people to have Thanksgiving meals and gifts at Christmas? I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. Even though we're doing, we created a foundation, and just because it is a foundation that helps the community doesn't mean that, hey, we have a foundation and therefore everyone just donate your money. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't just, checks just start rolling in. No, you have to be creative. You have to be different. Everyone has a dollar. The question is, who's that dollar going to go to? Is it going to go to your foundation? Is it going to go to a restaurant? Is it going to go to a kid's sports team? Who knows? So you need to be creative in, creating that foundation to be different, and a reason why someone says, hey, I see value in funding or sponsoring that particular organization, or the Tabby Time Founders Fund in our example. So over the past, we created it last year during COVID with the goal and mission to support existing, charities, nonprofits that where there was the greatest need, and also had, a great, rating from a nonprofit standpoint. So we really focused on food insecurities, which is and was a huge need today. And then also helping, make sure that people get, especially with the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving meals and Christmas meals and toys and whatnot. So we said, hey, how do we get people to get behind that? Well, we had to be creative because everyone has a golf outing. Okay, that's great. You have a golf outing. Awesome. All right. You just call people and say, hey, I want you to donate to our golf outing or participate in it. Can you sponsor it? It's going to be a great day. Our idea is, how do we do it and to have them even give more by delivering more value? We're going to say, hey, look, we're doing a golf outing, but even more so than that, we want to market your company on a daily basis. We want to be different. We had to be creative, right? Because at the end of the day, people say, hey, I only have so much money I can give. Well, we want to take that, right? And not we want to only take it because we want to win. We want to do it because we know that the organizations that we're giving to are going to have the greatest need and greatest impact. So we did that. We said, hey, we're going to basically be a marketing arm for you over the next 2 months. We're going to have your name on every post that we do. Your name's going to be on there. We're going to talk about how thankful we are. We're going to do literally one post just on your company. So it's, being creative that way in order to help have that event be successful. So you need to be creative in anything and everything that you do. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. I don't care if you're in banking or accounting. Guess what? You need to be creative.
Yeah, building a pivot table I often use as an example, like Doug in accounting, who builds a pivot table that shaves 10 minutes off his payroll or whatever. That's creative, right? So
yes, always.
Awesome.
And everyone is creative in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. Well, this has been fantastic. So you chose, in the truth or dare option, you chose truth. So please share a story where you felt like a little silly or embarrassed, and because part of the obstacles of creativity is worrying about fear of judgment from others. So I'd love to hear about a time where you felt like, oh, a little embarrassed.
So I think, I don't know if I was necessarily embarrassed, but I will say this. I did participate in the Family Feud. So I was on the show probably about 5-6 years ago. And we were so excited. We flew down to Atlanta. We participated in the show. And I was like, this was amazing experience. We came back. We talked about how great it was. And we're going to crush it. Wait till you see when it's live. And my dad's like, how did you guys do? And I'm like, we got 0 points. He's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we got 0 points. I said, you know what? Every time that we had an answer, like we might have gotten 6 out of 7 right, but they stole every time. He's like, aren't you embarrassed for that? I said, well, I mean, a little bit because I'm a terrible loser, but at the same time, I mean, the buzz is real. We're going to be on, national, really international TV. So that's kind of cool. But, that's the one thing. And look, we're all going to make mistakes and we're all going to have wins and losses. It's just how we go about it. We can't take ourselves too serious, right?
Yeah.
And make the best out of every opportunity. And guess what? Just like if a company that you close, it's okay. You gave it a shot. Guess what? In Family Feud, we gave it a shot.
Well, and really, I mean, I love that story because it's people like your family who gets 0 and laughs about it and considers it just a great experience that stands out versus the people who, beat themselves up or think it's terrible, they are embarrassed because we need to, I mean, it's this outdated evolutionary survival mechanism to want to fit in and to want to succeed and be good, quote unquote good, but sometimes being good means failing and having a good attitude and just moving on and like you said, not taking yourself too seriously. And when I do stand-up comedy, people often say it's the most terrifying thing ever, and I'm like, no, because like terrifying would be swimming with sharks or bungee jumping or like I'm not going to die on stage. Like, why do other opinions of us seem so scary? Because honestly, nobody really thinks about us that much anyway. Like, I think we all think like, oh, people are going to think this. Like, nobody really thinks about you anyway. It's classic. I don't know which comedian it said a joke about Canadian asked an American, like, what do you guys really think about us anyway in Canada? And they're like, we don't.
Exactly. It's so true. And I'll share a funny story about the Family Feud. By the way, I had the last answer, right, to answer, which was X'd out, okay, which we ended up losing the game there. And my answer was Canada, by the way. Just throwing that out there. It was So
what was the question?
The question was, what country, do you feel confident to buy a product from? And obviously USA was number 1. Japan, no, USA, we said we had USA, China, I think Germany was an answer, Japan, and the other our opponents stole it with Switzerland. But I said Canada because I grew up playing ice hockey, so all my stuff was from Canada.
Yeah. But that's the thing, people don't really think about. So everybody just channel your inner Canadian and realize that nobody really has you on their radar anyway. So you might as well do what you want and step out and take those risks and go on Family Feud and get 0 points. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining me and sharing about creativity and business and being an entrepreneur. I just love the way that you have so much grit and determination and such a great attitude, and also thinking about other people, like using that to help other people and in your philanthropy work. I don't love that you get up at 3:30 in the morning. I think that's ridiculous, but to each their own.
Don't knock it till you try it.
No, I'm not gonna. You know what? Like, I know we're over time. If you're okay with it, I am. But I gotta tell you,
I'm fine.
Okay, so I like to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, which is part of being entrepreneur and creative. And I took this online free Facebook course on taking photos of the Milky Way. Took the whole course. At the end of the course, I'm like, who am I kidding? I am not getting up at 2 a.m. to drive an hour out to the mountains to sit in the dark, in the cold with bears and take photos of this guy. So I was like, but it was still fun. And although when I was camping this past weekend, I did try to take some photos of the Milky Way. So maybe it was useful in the end.
Absolutely. Listen, all you're doing is just, you're just moving time. You're going to bed a little bit earlier, getting up a little bit earlier.
I guess so. Well, it's probably almost your bedtime now. So it's like 1 o'clock.
Dinner's in a few hours.
So please check out Mike's website, mikeregina.io, and Opposite Entrepreneur Podcast. I was on there, which was an awesome episode. And there's tons of other great episodes filled with business advice and success and how to be a great entrepreneur. So thank you so much, Mike, for joining me. And it was a pleasure.
Caroline, thank you so much for having me.
Bye.